Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge podcast. My name is Josh. Thanks for checking this out. If you're here for the pastor story, you're in for a treat today. It is part 3 of my why I'm an ex-pastor story, and this thing has blown up. Tons of comments, tons of people emailing me, reaching out with their personal stories, my friends and people reaching out to me on Facebook. This is resonating. This conversation is exploding, and I'm happy and I'm scared. So I'm not going to lie. It's got me a little bit freaked out. I'm waiting to get a lawyer letter from the church or whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to use the name of the church ever. I'm not going to say the names, but I left you guys with a cliffhanger yesterday, and I said that I walked in and I recorded the conversation. And so I just wanted to play a little bit of the recording, just my voice, so you know that I'm not faking that I have this recording. And here's the reason why I'm not going to play the recording, because I'm pretty sure when I signed, when we finally came to an agreement in the end, that the thing that I signed, and this is one thing that really bugged me, is that, and we'll get into that a little bit future, but my lawyer said, I made sure that through my lawyer that I am not signing an NDA. We'll never sign it because I want to tell my story. And so they said, okay, you have to sign an NDA. But apparently what I signed, and they slipped it in there, was that I can't release anything from my time there. So it's a little bit of a legal gray area, to be honest with you, about what happened during my time there. Because at this point in the meeting, I was fired. So technically, I think that I wasn't working there anymore. But I'm going to play you just a little bit so you can actually hear that I'm not joking, that I have this full recording.
Brain about the major things that I've missed because of my planning, and I couldn't even think of any. Like, I've not missed any major deadlines. The services that matter have been executed. The things that I'm in charge of have been executed. I think I don't know. That's why I was like, maybe.
And so that was just a point, and the things I was telling them, why am I being fired? Because I did my job, and I did my job very well. I just wanted to show you that, because I'm leading up to this recording. I want to walk you guys through what kind of happened. There's a few things I kind of missed on yesterday's show because I got so passionate and I got carried away and I just kept talking about other things. But I talked about the going over budget and that question that I was asking the pastors about what happened with the $150,000 over budget. And what I glossed over was that there's a $75,000 playground sitting in that lobby, okay, of that church, of that little mini church. The $75,000 playground, okay? And it just so happens that the executive pastor's wife is the children's pastor. And when I did some digging, when I got fired and I started researching and finding out and talking to the other people who had been fired from the same church, I found out that the executive pastor was fired from his last church for sort of the same type of thing that's going on here, is that his wife is the kids pastor and she wanted to build these giant wings for these kids because it brings people in and it's an attractor, and it really is. And apparently and I'm not sure if this is all true or correct, this is conjecture, but this is what I've heard from other people that went there, is that their lead pastor went on a sabbatical. And then the executive pastor, that is the executive pastor of this other church, took over and literally spent tons of money and built this wing while this pastor was away. So the pastor came back and said, what the heck? You're fired. And as far as I know, he sued that church for 12 months of severance and got it. And he is not allowed to step foot on that property anymore. And all this craziness went down at that other church. And some people had reached out to me and told me some stories about what went on. And it's just crazy. And so basically, same thing happened here. But what I found out later too from a bunch of other people that I talked to that would let go or fired before me was that executive pastor came on. And the lead pastor brought it to the staff, and the staff had kind of heard his story. And most of the staff said, we don't want you to bring him on. But the lead pastor was like, too bad, I'm bringing him on. Because again, the lead pastor does what he wants. It's not a team effort. And I also glossed over the fact that the executive pastor and the lead pastor of this church are voting members on the elder board, which is a huge conflict of interest. Think about it. So the lead pastor is on the board that makes the decisions that the elders are supposed to make. He is an elder himself. So he makes the decision, tells the elders agree with his decision, then he pass it down. So right from the very top, this lead pastor runs the show. What I found out, going back to that whole thing, was the kids pastor at the time, when he hired this guy that people didn't want him to hire, because this guy was fired. And I think the lead pastor hired this guy because he was his pit bull, his no man, the guy that takes the hit and is the bad guy, so that the lead pastor doesn't look like the bad guy ever. Because the executive pastor's job is to say no to everybody, to everything. And so in order to get this guy's wives hired, they fired the kids pastor at the time and got rid of him. And during this meeting, they actually talked about him and said, oh, he's so happy now. He went on to this pastor's convention thing and this expat, and now he's doing this thing. And they were propped up like they did it. And when I talked to him during the meeting, he was so upset and angry that they said that during this meeting, that they were the reason he got this new job and all this stuff. And he was so much more happy. But they ousted him to hire the executive pastor's wife. Massive conflict of interest. Not only are these two pastors pulling in 2 full-time salaries, but if one of them does something wrong, it's going to get glossed over, right? You can't, you should never hire couples. I'm not saying it's never, never, ever. That's a recipe for disaster in churches, as far as I'm concerned. And so, again, you got to think that massive giant playground in the atrium in the main, when they started at the church, when they brought him in and they didn't want him to bring him in, he started. And then when they kicked out the other kids pastor, the main pastor went to the team and said, okay, now we're thinking about hiring his wife. And everybody, I think apparently what I heard from the person that was let go told me she was in the meeting and said, 100% of people said, no, that is a bad idea. You should not hire this person. That is a bad idea. What does the lead pastor do? Hires the person. So much shadiness goes on behind closed doors. And this is, again, how the sausage is made in these big churches. Scratch my back, scratch yours. People are hired that shouldn't be hired, that maybe not be qualified for the job, and just because they need this person. Or when I was fired, I think the youth pastor was on his way out, and so they hired a new youth pastor and then hired his wife to be the worship pastor. It's just a recipe for disaster. And the funniest thing about this whole situation is I reached out to them before they took the job and I said, I'd love to talk to you about this position. I just want to let you know and warn you. And I hope pastors would reach out to me if I would ever look at another job and say, look, this is the issue. They didn't want to hear it. They said, we appreciate you reaching out. We don't want to hear it. Literally said the words, we don't want to hear it. Just blind. But the funniest thing that happened is, I think less than a year into this new worship leader's job, she gets pregnant and is now on maternity leave. It's so funny. Just craziness, but I'm sure they're not going to fire her for being on maternity leave. So all this to say that all these things that were going on in the back end were because this executive pastor and lead pastor were running the show from the top. And they were making decisions that nobody wanted them to make. And they just didn't care. Like hiring your wife and then taking 2 full-time salaries from this church, that is a lot of money. Okay, a lot of money. And by accident, the administrator, the money lady at the church, sent me everybody's pay structure by accident later after I was fired. So I didn't take it with me or anything like that. She sent me an email that had everybody's banking information and what everybody got paid. And she was flipping out because she sent me this thing by accident. She's like, can you make sure you delete it? And I just didn't respond. I'm like, I'm not saying a word. But now I see what everybody makes at this church. And it was like, here's another thing that bugs me about churches is that they're nonprofit organizations and you're supposed to be able to tell what people make, right? And there's this thing in Ontario specifically, it's called the Sunshine List. And if you work for a nonprofit organization and you make over $100,000, you're supposed to be on the Sunshine List. And I know for a fact that these pastors probably should be on the Sunshine List, but because you're clergy, you actually get the money taken off. I think it's a lot of money. You get a clergy tax residency deduction in Ontario if you're clergy. And so what happens is you get all this money taken off, which means you make even more because you don't pay taxes on 10 months of what would be your mortgage or something like that. And you get all these write-offs. And so these pastors are making a lot of money, but they're doing it in a way that the government sees less, so they're not on the Sunshine List. And they should be on the Sunshine List. This pastor and his wife are taking 2 salaries from this church. And so they're hiring this youth pastor they really want, and his wife's looking for a job, so they hire her. And someone asked in one of the comments in the YouTube comments, did the music suffer after you left? And from what I've heard from everybody who's reached out to me about it, yes. That sucks because I built something up there that I was so proud of, and they just let it just fall apart and dismantle. And now it's apparently the worst it's ever been. Even before I came. So that was a kick in the balls, to be honest with you. I'm like, I wish they would have just kept all the programs and things I did so that they could have continued on with good music. But what it showed me was that the lead pastor could care less about the music. And it was about, okay, well, the music was great, but it was detracting from me. And he was narcissistic and I need to be the central focus here. And so I got to go back to another story. One thing that really, really pissed me off about this whole situation. In a lot of big churches, marketing is important. And a lot of big churches like North Point and all these other churches, they have what's called a target. They literally shape and build their services and their Sunday morning experiences for a specific target. I think North Point targets dads who make this kind of money and or this, because if you bring a dad to a church, the whole family's coming. If you bring a mom to a church, the family might not come. But that's why they target dads. And so we were looking for a target because we kept getting micromanaged and pushed back on what we were doing. Specifically, I was, for the music I was choosing and the modernness of it all, because I'm like, this is what you hired me for? So why are we pushing back? In order to overcome that, I'd say, okay, you need to tell me your target so that I can be justified in the way that I chose the music we were going to do, right? And so we were itching for this target, and we kept pushing for this target. And so the executive pastor and lead pastor went off to the retreat with the elders where they make the plan for the year. And they were going to get that target. And we were so excited for this target. We were like, okay, now I can be justified in how I do this, or change the way I'm doing it so they can make it work better. And he comes back, puts up the PowerPoint presentation, says, here's what we're going to do for the year. We're all excited. And then he gets to the target part. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Let's rock this target. No joke, no word of a lie. The target on the screen is redacted, like a black marker through it. And I'm like, what? Why did you redact the target? And he's like, well, we couldn't come to a conclusion, blah, 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 blah. They came to a conclusion. It was on that piece of paper, but he redacted it because I believe what would have happened was it would have justified what I was doing. I didn't say anything about it. I just put it in here and I said, oh man, this is crazy. What is happening? I also missed the talking about my last performance review. So my last performance review took place after my leave started. So don't forget, they were already pissed that I was taking my leave. And then the lead pastor said, I want you to come in on this day to do your last performance review, which, by the way, started after my leave. So I didn't have to do anything. I'm on my leave. You cannot expect me to come in, but they did. And I missed the first meeting because I was on vacation, which was planned, and he didn't check. And so he got super angry at me for missing this meeting. He's like, I'm so upset right now. And he was just looking for things to be upset about. And I said, well, I'm on vacation that I booked way before I even chose to go on leave. So sorry, I was on vacation. So I booked my vacation so that it coincided with the end of my time before my leave started, right? So I just was like, let's just put it all together so I didn't miss it out. I got paid for my leave, for my vacation, right? Because you can't carry it over. And so he was upset. And then I missed the next meeting, which was my fault, okay? I am not like totally innocent in all this stuff. There are some things that I definitely dropped the ball on, and I forgot to talk about that too, and we'll talk about that going forward. What my weaknesses were, and we'll go through that because I'm not perfect. Let's not pretend I'm perfect because I'm not. And so that was my fault for missing the second meeting. I was just so busy with life, and we were with the kids, and everything was nuts, and he got super mad, even more mad. So when I came in for the third plan meeting, finally, we sat down for the review, and I got the worst review I've ever gotten. So the 2 years before, I was like, I had a halo. Bing, you're amazing. We love you. We love your worship, blah, blah, blah. And this one was like, I hate you now. So I was like, wow, everything has changed. Everything has changed. And then so what I did during this meeting was then I had all these notes. And I said, look, here are the things that I'm struggling with. Here are the issues that I'm going through. And I laid it all out. And I told him what was going on because I wanted to be honest. Because in church, if you can't be honest, where can you be honest? And again, these pastors are trained in the art of grace. This church's main motto is no perfect people allowed. Come on in and we'll grace for everybody. And so I was like, look, here's what I'm struggling with. And so this is why I'm burning out. And he just took it in and then he just didn't say a word. He already had what he was going to say locked down for this meeting. He was setting this thing up after I made leave. So think about this. I took my leave and then he set me up with a bad performance review because this is how they were going to fire me. Think about this. This is how they were going to fire me. They were looking for something so legally they could fire me because they can't say that they fired me because of my paternity leave because that's illegal. And so this is what he said. He said, you missed your MAP goal. And let me tell you about the MAP goals at this church, okay? Basically, it's extra work. So not only am I doing a full-time job and a half for a full year of that position, they also give you this thing every year that every pastor in that place has to do is called a MAP goal, Ministry Action Plan. And you have to say, these are the 3 things I'm going to try to achieve this year on top of everything else I already do. Just extra work, busy work. And it's stupid. Some things are cool, some pastors do it, but here's the thing. Nobody meets their MAP goals. They're just basically a little bit of I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to do this. For example, the small groups pastor has been there for years. Such a great dude, but not effective at his job. Let's just say that. He's a really cool guy, a really great dude, been there forever. But his MAP goals is I'm going to increase small groups by 50% or 10%, even 10, and never ever met his MAP goals. Ever. Nobody wants to get a small group. So, and then other group. And then, so my map goals that for that year were, I was going to help the youth band get better at their worship, help them with tracks, blah, blah, blah. I was going to help the young adults band with the same thing. And I forget what the other map goal was. I think it didn't matter because it didn't matter. It wasn't part of the missed map goal. He says, so you missed these goals. And I said, well, here's why I missed the goal. Because I went to the youth band and I said, hey guys, how can I help you? Let's start a plan, blah, blah, blah. Let's figure it out. And they were like, these kids, they were up and coming and they were like, we don't need your help. We're good. We're good to go. I'm like, well, if you need my help, you know where my office is, give me a holler, whatever, text me. I'm like, no problem, cool. They didn't want my help and they were doing okay. And I said, cool. I didn't know that it was going to come back against me that I had to force my help onto people. You cannot force people to take your help. And it wasn't a bad thing. They weren't just like, no, piss off. We hate you. You're old. It was like, we just don't need your help. We're doing okay. Thanks. And I'm like, cool. Same thing at young adults. They were doing well. They had 2 teams. The intern that took over for me when I left, he was one of the leaders, and another leader who was an amazing singer, vocalist, and I trusted her, and she was really cool. And I said, and she was one of my main worship leaders. I'm like, these people have it, but if you need me, I'm here. But he used that as ammo to say, you missed these map goals. And I said, well, they didn't want my help. And he's like, well, now you're throwing them under the bus. I'm like, okay. And I'm sitting in the meeting, like, what is happening? And I started like putting it all together. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he went on to say things like, you know, all these things that you're complaining about, blah, blah, you asked for a raise and you didn't get it. And I did ask for a raise because I was trying to put my wife through school and I was working extreme amounts of overtime. And so I asked for a raise. They didn't give me the raise. And I said, no problem. Whatever. At least I asked. I didn't complain that I didn't get the raise. I just didn't get it. And then he just went on and he just said, he didn't know about all those issues I had, and I laid it out in this meeting. But then he already had a plan in place, and he's like, you know, you missed map goals, and I'm like, okay, well, how else am I doing? And then we went through all the little things. I graded myself, he graded me, and apparently now I'm the worst person on staff because and look at the timing of it. It just cannot be avoided that the timing happened after I took my leave. Okay, so I left that meeting thinking, oh my gosh. And another thing happened in that meeting. He's like, when you get back here, I want you to go back to Bible college. And I'm like, what? I went to Bible college. I spent a lot of money in Bible college. He's like, you know, I have concerns about your theology and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what do you mean? What specific concerns do you have about my theology? And you couldn't say anything. He's just like, you know, when we're looking for scripture, sometimes you have to Google it. I'm like, okay, I have the worst memory on earth, but I know my theology. I know what I believe. And we've had this meeting before. You hired me based on that. You've talked to me about my theology. You clearly agree. I agree with the stances that the church takes theologically. What's the issue? He was just looking for extra things. And I'm like, first of all, I don't have time to do what I'm doing now. You want me to go to Bible college? Shall I just tell my family, piss off, I'll see you in a few years, or what? I was pissed. I didn't say anything, but I'm like, there's no way I'm going to Bible college. Okay? I already didn't like going to Bible college, so I'm not going back specifically. So I was pissed about that. He was just stacking things because they were stacking this to prepare to fire me. Okay. But I didn't know it at the time until after hindsight. Right. So I left that meeting just kind of dejected. And I'm like, okay, I told him the issues I was having and I was honest with him because I wanted to fix those issues. And some of those issues were my fault. So let's get into where I failed. And there is a bunch of places like I missed that meeting. For sure. But here's the thing. I'm a type of guy that's early for everything. I hate being late, and I rarely miss deadlines, if ever, because that stresses me out. But I do my best work under the gun, under the pressure. Like I just am good under pressure, and I work very well. These videos I do them and edit them and upload them. It's under pressure. I just work. That's how I thrive. And so I've never missed a deadline. And I asked him in the meeting I showed you in that specific clip, I was saying, when did I miss any deadlines? When did I do anything? And their rebuttal was, well, your administrator, you know, you're doing that vocal conference, and you know, the person that was going to help you, you know, left the team and didn't want to help, and so you put it on her. And I'm like, that girl left the church because she asked to do something here for her schooling. She was studying religion and blah, 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 and was doing her thesis on worship music and asked to do that at this church. And you told me to tell her to piss off. That's why she left. So I didn't have the capacity to fill that role that she was doing. And so they blamed me that was me. So maybe, but they told me to tell her to piss off. So that was the thing that they came out with. And I'm like, that's not a missed deadline. I never missed deadlines ever. And again, I'm going to go back to the whole thing that nobody ever reaches their map goals. They're just like extra work, and you're trying to build towards it. Nobody's ever reached it. Even the lead pastor doesn't reach his map goals. It doesn't happen. So they found that. And when I talked to all the people who left before me, all those people were like, nobody ever reaches their MAP goals. And it's just like extra busy work because I don't know why. It was one of those things that just bugged me so much. So yeah, I left that performance review pissed off. I was like, what the heck just happened there? Like, I am doing my job and I do my job very well. I overwork myself. I'm here for everything. I don't miss deadlines. People like what I'm bringing on Sunday morning. Not everybody, but the majority of people did with growing. Clearly we were growing. We had no room for anybody. It was packed solid. And it was because I was asking questions, but I wasn't toxic. I wasn't the type of guy in the office that was like, I hate everybody. Let's burn the place to the ground. I was never that way. All my issues I internalized. And then at this meeting, because I was burning out and I was trying to tell him why I was burning out, I was trying to be honest so that we could come to an agreement on how we could fix things and what I could do better and what they could do better. Let's get into my issues and my faults, because I'm not innocent here at all. So when I took this job, when they ask you that question, what's your weakest, what are you most weak in or whatever, what's your weakest point of being a person? I don't know. And I said, look, I am the worst administrator on planet Earth. I need a handler. I need someone to tell me, you got a meeting here, you got this, and I just needed it, right? And they obviously didn't have that. And that's okay. I got better at it over the years, but I got write one-word emails. I get back to people really quickly, and I'm just bad at planning. But I still don't miss deadlines, okay? I might put extra stress on myself and others because I get it down to the wire, but everything gets done. And I said, look, I'm bad at administration. And so I just wasn't very good at it. And planning, I just was always like, what's next? And they're like, oh yeah, this thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to go do that thing. And I would do that. And it stresses people out. I do get that. I did let go of some people on the worship team that they told me to let go of because of issues we're having. And I didn't stand up for those people. That was a big one. My worship team, some of them didn't, some of them trusted me to have their back. But when an executive pastor is telling you, like, let me give you an example. This girl, beautiful voice, incredible person. She was doing her thesis, and I just talked about this for a second. She's doing a thesis on worship music in the church, and it's a very good, cool subject. She comes to me for a meeting. She says, look, I've been serving here for years. I'm a volunteer. I've been doing lots. I'm wondering if you can reach out to the lead pastor, executive pastor, and ask them if I can do a worship night here and ask them some questions about worship music. Not a big deal. It's just not. It was really cool for her, and she needed this to graduate, by the way. And so I brought it to the leadership, and they're like, no. It didn't matter. Like, they didn't want to hear it. They're like, tell her no. And so it's on me to go to her and say sorry. And then I'm the bad guy. And she left the church. And so I never stood up for people. I tried, but I didn't really give it my all. If I was strong in my resolve, I would have been like, guys, we really need to let this person do this thing because it's really important to her. And she's been serving here. And it's not theologically unsound or anything that she's doing. She's just asking people questions about worship. And it's her thesis. And so I didn't. And so there were some things I failed there. I mean, I'm not innocent. And I was complaining when I asked them the questions about the 150,000. When I told the lead pastor, like, hey, you get your way around here. That's kind of how it goes. What you say goes, just so you know. And he didn't like that. And so there were some areas that I just wasn't strong in. Like, planning was one of the big ones. And so being a leader of people was maybe being a leader, I'm a natural leader. And so that means on stage, I run a tight ship and the music sounds good and the bands and my arrangements are really good. But when it came to like personal leadership or like I was pastoring people, I didn't really have an opportunity to do that because I didn't have time. And they're like, we need you to do that. I'm like, well, then free up some time by hiring somebody and helping me. And then they did, and then she didn't help me. So they just had unreal expectations put on me. But I was not innocent in all of that. So then it gets to the point where I left you at the last part of the video where I went in for the meeting. I pressed record on my phone because someone had told me, and I got a comment on YouTube saying, when I heard that you recorded this conversation, I'm out. That's fine. That's fine. But I was warned by the person before me that was let go and a bunch of other people, you need to record your conversations when you go into these big level meetings. Also, I have a bad memory, and I really do, and I have bad recall for certain things. Unless I'm passionate about it like this. But I really wanted to make sure that when I went and talked to my wife after that, she heard everything, right? I really wanted, because she's got a great memory. And so I pressed record, put it in my pocket, and walked into the office. And like, it went down. And because I signed that stupid thing when we had our final thing and I got tricked, even my lawyer failed me on this one. Basically, she said, you can't release that to the public because it's from the job. So again, it's a gray area, and maybe I will release it, but I don't know, because I know that I'll probably get a cease and desist or sued at some level. So maybe what I'll do is get the gumption up, and if this gets any bigger, this blows up a little bit bigger, then I will release the recording. But know that I have the recording. And know this, I sent them the recording after we were our lawyers were talking, and I sent this to an elder, and that elder said, look, it's important that you send this to the lead pastor and executive pastor so they know what you're accusing them of and when you know what you're saying. I'm like, yeah, I'm not accusing them of anything. This is their voice. This is their lies that they put on tape. So I sent it to them, said, just so you guys know, this is what I'm going to be releasing to the public. And no joke, it was the Raptors final. And the lead pastor is the biggest Raptors fan of all time. And it was the Raptors final where they won the ring that night. They won it. And I can imagine him, I hope it ruined his night. Because that lawyer called me at 11 p.m. Their lawyer called me at 11 p.m. freaking. No, my lawyer called because their lawyer called her lawyer. And freaking about these things and just like threatening to sue me and everything. I'm like, I thought I was allowed to say this stuff. And my lawyer was like, well, I guess that you signed this thing. I'm like, you're my lawyer. What the heck? I was so angry because I made it clear to my lawyer, no NDAs. I want to be able to tell my story unhindered. And this was where she failed me. She said, you can't. Technically, based on this thing, you can't. Or maybe if someone's out there who's a lawyer in Canada or Ontario or knows somebody who's a lawyer, I'm happy to pay a little bit of money to find out if I can release this. And if that's the case, I will release it. And because when you hear it with your own ears, you will be mind blown what happened in this. And it scared them so much that they got together emergency elders meeting. Okay, pretty sure some of them had to come back from vacation. Emergency elders meeting to get this lawyer. Scared the living shit out of me that night. I was scared. So a lot of this is like when a church can hire a lawyer and like just on a whim and just like come after you, it gets scary. I don't care who you are. When a lawyer is freaking, it can be scary, right? So that's kind of what happened. So I didn't release the recording to the public after that. But what I did do in the first podcast that I released, which is at the Burnt Out Pastor, and you can find it on any platform, I released what's called a timestamp. So I'm going to walk you guys through the timestamp. So I'm going to give you a timestamp. So it'll say 01, so the first second, and I'll tell you what happened. And then I'm going to walk you through the process and what we were talking about, and I'm going to give you a chance. I'll tell you what they were saying. And so here's it. I press record. I walk into sit down in the meeting. Everybody's just super cringy. It's like everybody's on edge and they're like, hey, so 0 to 01. So the first second opening, the lead pastor says he's excited about what I bring, but you're just not a good fit anymore. And he kind of said it like, and they kind of like, we're just being beaten around the bush a little bit about it. We love what you do here. We love your music. We love your performance. We love all the work you've done. You brought us to this level, blah, 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 blah. But you're not a good fit anymore. Basically is how he ended that sentence. I'm like, I knew. And then instantly I knew, boom, I'm being fired. Then at 59 seconds, the lead pastor says what I'm unhappy about. So he literally projected to me what I was unhappy about, not what he was unhappy about. He's like, you're unhappy about your pay. You're unhappy about the workload that you have. You're unhappy about this, this, and this. And I'm like, we think you need to go. So I just basically I clarified my position at 1 minute and 50 seconds that I'm not unhappy about those things. I was just telling you those are some issues, right? And I was like, look, I'm not unhappy about them, but these are some issues that I was struggling with. Unhappy and struggling are two different things. But he says, look, you're unhappy, so you should go. I'm like, okay. At 3 minutes and 26 seconds, lead pastor says, you missed your performance evaluation. And that was the one I told you about when I was on vacation. And I was like, okay, I was on vacation. We clarified that. But then I did miss the second one. He was right. And he was pissed about that. But let's not forget, everybody, I was on leave at this point. I had no obligation legally to come in. I did not have to come in. And they were basically forcing me to come in. And here's another thing. I want to go back to that meeting for a second. He also said during that meeting when I was leaving that we want you to come in monthly to talk about what going forward, what we're going to do. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm not coming in monthly. I'm on leave. This is my chance to escape from this place, to recharge my batteries and do what I need to do. And they basically said, you need to come in monthly. And I didn't. And I stuck, and pretty much that's why they got pissed. 3 minutes, 52 seconds. Highlighting my complaints, including that I said the lead pastor always gets his way. So he said it again. He's like, I'm really upset that you said I always get my way, which is true. And I said it in the context of I said, look, what you say goes around here. And I reiterated, I said, look, I was just saying what you say goes around here and I'm happy to do it. But I wanted to let you know it's not a team effort. He clearly was very upset about that. And so I said that at that meeting where I said, here are my issues. At 4 minutes and 14 seconds, the end of the year report. I didn't even tell you about the end of the report. This is crazy. So the lead pastor was very angry about this report. So every year in June, we have this thing called a family celebration meeting where we get together and we talk about how everything's rainbows and apple pie. You cannot talk about what you're struggling with, apparently, at this. And so at the end of that year, this was the end of the third year-ish, 2.5 years where I was like, here's my end of year report. I'm struggling with this. And I need to get better at this. I was hitting myself with this. I was like, look, I need to get better at this because I'm missing these. And he was like so mad. I have the receipts, guys, where he says, you're not saying this. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not saying this? And through a friend of mine, I said, does this sound bad? And he's like, no, this sounds like a normal pastor thing. You're telling people what you're struggling with and you need help. I don't see anything wrong with that. And neither did I. But he was so mad that I was about to release something that didn't make everybody look amazing, right? And so I said, fine, you can rewrite this thing, but don't put my name on it. And that's what my friend told me to do. And so he was super mad about that. And so I changed my end of report, and I shouldn't have done it, and I made it sound all fluffy and rainbows. And I was pissed that I did that, but he pressured me to change the truth. Really did. 5 minutes and 2 seconds, me clarifying again that I'm not unhappy. Because I knew what they were trying to do here. I was catching on. I'm like, oh, they want me to say it in this meeting that yeah, you're right, I'm unhappy, so I should leave. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Was I unhappy a little bit? Of course I was. But nobody's perfectly happy in every position they have. But I was unhappy because I was being burned out, and I wanted to figure out how we could fix it. Wasn't unhappy enough to just leave. So at 5 minutes, 57 seconds, me telling them that they had shifted my job description for their benefit, but were unwilling to shift my job description to benefit me. And they were like, what? What do you mean? We didn't shift your job description. They shifted it like 4 times. The amount of people who were under me, how I could do things, the amount of red tape I had to go through. And I said, and then the executive pastor at 7 minutes and 31 seconds explained to me why they shifted the job description. So he's like, no, we don't. And then he said, no, here's why we did it. So he basically was just trying to gaslight me. And this happens a lot during this meeting, by the way. At 8 minutes and 47 seconds, I said this, I'm not complaining it happened. I'm just saying that it did. Like they were trying to say, well, we did it because we wanted to help you. And I'm like, okay, but don't say you didn't do it because you did do it. You did change my job description. And they were talking about, well, we don't do that. We don't change job descriptions. The whole argument here was that I was asking them to change my job description so I didn't have to work 60 hours a week. I said, can you change it so that I can only work 40 hours a week and take this off my plate and this off my plate? That's why they were angry. I said, look, these are the things I can do in 40 hours. Here's what I can't do anymore. And they were like, nope. They were unwilling to shift there, but they'd shifted everything else for their favor to set me up to fail. That's what happened. This is crazy. I'm reliving this right now, and it's triggering me. At 10 minutes and 20 seconds, trying to find out what deadlines they say I missed, and that's the recording I played for you in the beginning. And I rarely missed a deadline. Maybe a meeting once or twice over the 2.5 years, but not that I can remember, not that ever made a difference or stressed people out to a degree where we missed anything ever. The biggest things that happened, Christmas, Easter, all the big stuff, never a deadline was missed. Ever. Videos, nothing. Nothing was ever missed. So I don't know what they were talking about. And then the one he gave me, but the vocal conference was a fail. It wasn't a missed deadline. 11 minutes, 36 seconds, we brought up the issue of the help, hiring the worship leader that was supposed to help me. And then when the campus pastor came in and said she's not helping me anymore. And so that came up. And then I got gaslighted at 12 minutes and 32 seconds by the executive pastor again saying, you didn't understand us, how this was going down. I'm like, what's not to understand? I helped you write the job description and we discussed this and said, this is what this person is going to do. It was in the job description and then they changed it without asking me and then gaslighted me saying, no, you're wrong. You just didn't understand. So I was gaslighted again in this meeting. And they're trying to say, no, you didn't understand. I wish you guys could hear this, the way that they said it. You guys would be in flames if you heard the way that they were talking about this stuff. You would just be like, I cannot believe they're saying this stuff. Just crazy. At 13 minutes and 20 seconds, executive pastor says, quote, whether you heard those in the same way or not. There were no meetings, no emails that I have at all saying that this person was not going to do those things. What the executive pastor was saying is not true. My expectations were set from the beginning of the whole process, and I was pumped, and everybody knew it. So when I was brought in for that secret meeting or that setup meeting, they knew I was going to be pissed because they knew my expectations. So they had to gaslight me and say, no, you were wrong. You just didn't, whether you heard it in the same way or not. That is typical gaslighting, and it should never, ever happen in workplace because it makes people have anxiety and stress because like, am I crazy? What did I miss? That's why it's dangerous. At 14 minutes and 40 seconds, key moments in the past year provided in my bad job performance. So I asked the executive pastor and lead pastor who overspent the new campus by $150,000 and was met with anger from the executive pastor. So they're saying key moments in the last year provided in my they couldn't find any key moments. The church was growing faster than it ever was before. So my job performance was right on par with what I was supposed to be doing. It was growing. That's literally the job of churches. 15 minutes and 50 seconds, executive pastor says, we can't change structure. He just said that. Like, I wish you could hear the way he said it. He's like, we don't change structure. We can't. We have it all locked in. We have policies. And I'm like, but you've changed my job description 3 times and the structure multiple times. And so he said, you're not allowed to be frustrated about that. So I was so upset when he said that. I'm like, you definitely did this. And you keep saying you didn't, and you did. Like, I'm not crazy. 16 minutes, 11 seconds. They were talking about my burnout and my anxiety and my levels. Listen to this. We are worried about, quote, your levels of personal soul health that makes you not a fit here. Hear what they just said there. We are worried about your levels of personal soul health. These people now can see my soul. Did I miss that memo that these pastors can see what's in my soul? They were judging, saying, we think your soul health is off. Based on what? And they couldn't provide it. I was so upset that they said that. I just was like, I didn't say a word. I'm like, I'm recording this. And now you guys have it on tape that you literally are telling, you can see my soul. At 16 minutes and 48 seconds, he was basically saying, we want to come to the congregation together with you saying that you're leaving, that we're not firing you. He wanted to lie to the congregation. 17 minutes, 12 seconds. The lead pastor says this, in quote, if we brought you back, we're scared that after Easter, I'd be coming back to complain again and that none of my frustrations would be fixed. So then why wouldn't you just take a minute to help me fix the frustrations and some of the issues? You're not willing to help me fix these things? Or you're not willing to meet me halfway at least? And so basically they just gave it away right there, that they were worried that when I came back, I was going to take leave again, which right there proves to me that they're firing me because I took leave, that they're scared I'm going to do it again. Yeah, gets worse. 17 minutes and 58 seconds. If you, quote, if you hadn't gone on paternity leave, the executive pastor was alluding here to me coming in monthly with the lead pastor while I was on leave, which I didn't feel like I should since I was on leave, and said the lead pastor would have been walking through these issues with me during those coaching sessions. So he said, because you didn't come in, we couldn't deal with the issues, and now you're being fired. That one was hard because I was like, so because I didn't come in during my leave, you guys are firing me. So it just keeps getting worse. At 18 minutes and 18 seconds, I prompted the meeting, meaning I wanted to come back to work early, but they said no. This is where they admitted that they were already talking about firing me before I even took leave, because this is how they protect themselves. They said, no, it wasn't because of leave. We were talking about this way before. And we'll get to that in a minute. 18 minutes and 40 seconds, I tell them that I feel that I'm a good fit. And I said this because I know I was recording, and I did believe this. I was like, I am a good fit. I don't agree with your statements. I'm not unhappy. Because I talk about my frustrations doesn't mean that I want to quit or leave, that I'm super unhappy. I was telling you about my frustrations because I was looking for help. 18 minutes and 54 seconds, I state that by law, I'm allowed to have my job back. And the lead pastor admits that he was wrong. He's like, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have said that to you. So I was like, got it on tape. At 19 minutes, I'm trying to leave the meeting because I'm getting high levels. I have generalized anxiety disorder, by the way. And a lot of people have that. My anxiety levels were just rising. And I was just like, I have to get out of here. So I was like, what are the next steps? Can we just get on with this? What are the next steps? And they were just not letting me leave. And it was crazy. Like, it was crazy. The executive pastor saying he cares for me and my family. He's like, we care for you and your family. And I was at this point done. I'm like, look, it's not evident here in this meeting. So just don't patronize me and stop saying that stuff. And I said, and this is the point where I started getting a little bit upset. And I said, guys, what you're doing here is illegal. You're firing me because I took parental leave, and that is illegal. Then they started getting a little bit red in the face because now I'm starting to call them out. And at 20 minutes and 15 seconds, the executive pastor says, it's not illegal to fire someone on paternity leave, saying they are not firing me because I took leave. And so that's their way of protecting. They're saying, well, we didn't fire you because of paternity leave. I'm like, okay. At 20 minutes and 36 seconds, lead pastor and executive pastor saying, apparently you're not on parental leave because I admitted to them that my EI had run out. My employment insurance had run out. So they were saying they took this as a legal loophole to say that I'm no longer on parental leave. Like, they were trying to dig at something. Like, well, you're not on parental leave, so we're firing you now. They were trying to use that as to say, well, you're not on parental leave, so we can fire you. And I was like, nope. Parental leave is protected whether or not you take employment insurance. I still get my 12 months of parental leave, even if I don't get the employment insurance. And they didn't know that. And I'm like, well, I know that. And you guys are basically straight up looking for a loophole to fire me. 20 minutes, 59 seconds. I asked them to clarify why they think I'm not on parental leave. And then they tried to say, well, you're not getting EI. I'm like, nope. Sorry, dudes. Wrong. Jeopardy buzzer. You're wrong. 2128. Executive pastor stated that parental leave is the time you're on EI receiving funds for parental leave. Nope, he was wrong. And I reached out to my EI worker and I asked them I was totally justified. So they were just teeing up. They were looking for loopholes. And that's the scary part here, okay? They were looking because they were lying. 22 minutes and 8 seconds telling me I was done in December. So meaning that you ran out. And so basically they're saying, well, your EI ran out in December. So you were on parental leave till December. Now it's March and you're screwed. I'm like, these guys were just looking, man, and I was pissed now, okay? 22 minutes, 31 seconds. Executive pastor admitting, I only needed to give him 4 weeks notice by law, and he was right. And that's when the lead pastor's like, you're right. I should have said, yes, you can come back. And they were just trying to cover their butts here. 22 minutes and 52 seconds. I asked, why wait until the end of my leave to tell me all this, right? Because I still had 3 months of leave left, and they weren't going to wait until I was done. And I would have been screwed. And then the executive pastor admits that he was going to tell me in March, in order to give me more severance or something like that. I don't know. It was just crazy. And they help you find another, like they were virtue signaling saying, we're going to help you with this. And basically it made it worse. It was crazy. So they were just going to wait. And that's gross that they were going to do that. Because they were going to, we didn't want to fire you at Christmas because it's Christmas. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for being great dudes. 23 minutes, 33 seconds. I call them out on their math. It's just, we're talking severance stuff and it doesn't matter. I'm not going to be talking about the severance. I'm not allowed to talk about it. So I'll be skipping over those parts. 25 minutes, 10 seconds, me asking them if they realize that it's a death sentence to be fired from a job, looking for another ministry job. Okay. I'm like, do you guys realize that you firing me, it's going to be really hard for me to find another job because I'm being fired from a high level position and other churches are going to be like, why'd you get fired? And then they're going to have to call you and you're going to have to say, well, he did this bad, he missed his MAP goals and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this is a death sentence because they're firing me and I didn't do anything wrong. 25-40, I remind them that from day one, what my weaknesses were, and they knew it from day one before they hired me. And they were trying to call me out on my weaknesses saying, well, you had to do this, you had to get better administration. And by the way, over the 2.5 years I worked there, my administrative skills accelerated. I didn't get worse. I got way better, but it just still wasn't good enough for them. 26-14, lead pastor says he'd give me a reference letter that would be appropriate if I wanted to, saying that it's, quote, not a firing. Hear that? Lying, basically. Okay with lying. I know that sounds like a nice thing for an employer to do. We're talking pastors here, guys. He was okay with lying just to get me out the door for me to sign this paper. We're okay with lying. This is why I wish you could hear this. 26 minutes, 42 seconds. Lead pastor says he would be happy to communicate this as not a firing. These guys are itching to control the narrative and the optics of this. And they were hoping I would say, yeah, that sounds good because if it comes across as not a firing, it'd be easier for me to find a job. They don't know me. I'm a proponent of justice. You guys know that. And I'm like, 2702, lead pastor admits I'm one of the best worship leaders that he knows of. So it's basically they're trying to you're really good. And if we come across that this isn't a firing, you'll find another job easy. I'll write a great letter of reference, blah, blah, blah. This does not have to sound like a firing. We can lie. 27-24, lead pastor admits he doesn't want to see another point where I'd be pushing for another break, which directly alludes to my leave as the reason for firing me. Literally said, we're scared you're going to come back and take another leave. I mean, in a court of law, pretty sure that would be a tight argument. Again, this is where it gets crazy. 27-43, the lead pastor says, we don't want to tell the congregation that we fired you. And this is all the 10 people that were, and I'll talk about this a little bit, maybe in another episode. We're already getting too long. There were 10 people that were let go before me, and I talked to most of them. I had lunch meetings with all of them. And this one thing stood true, is that they always came across like none of them were fired, that it was all their choice, and they all signed agreements and all this stuff to be silent on it. And so they want to control this. They want to tell you that they fired someone because everybody be like, why'd you fire this guy? He was good at what he did. So they wanted to come across that I left. Okay? And we're going to get to that. So he was okay lying to his congregation, by the way. That's a lie. Like, is there another way to look at that? We're okay with telling congregation that we didn't fire you, that you left. That is a lie. 28-29, lead pastor says, we don't want to be here. This is not our choice. Okay. But that's your choice. 28-57, executive pastor wanting to hand me the paper explaining why I'm being fired. He's telling the lead pastor, not that one. There was 2 pieces of paper on the lead pastor's desk, and he reached for one. Okay, this is this tinfoil hat. And he's like, no, not that one. They had 2 documents based on my reaction. So if I would have said, yeah, let's go with this whole narrative that you didn't fire me, that was the other piece of paper. They were ready. Okay? They were ready. This is crazy. At 29:37, the executive pastor says, quote, "Our heart would be to be able to come together and have this come across as an agreed upon thing." They keep pushing this. They keep wanting to say, we want this to come across like this is an agreed upon thing, that we didn't fire you. A mutual agreement. And it isn't, and he said this, and it isn't, and it, quote, "It isn't pictured that we are firing you." I don't know how much else I need to tell you guys, but this is a lie. Okay? They kept saying it over and over again, and I kept getting really uncomfortable. 29:57, I say, I want to be clear. It's you who thinks that. I do not think that. Making it known to the lead pastor, I said, look, I want you to admit that you fired me. Tell everybody you fired me. They said that they would do that. So that's what the other paper was for. I said, look, you're not telling people that I left, and this is not mutual. You're telling them you fired me. Didn't see that coming. 31:21, explaining my EI was still being looked at. There's another thing about employment insurance. They keep bringing that back. They keep bringing up the employment insurance and parental leave like I was going to, like anything was going to change. I'm like, I'm on parental leave. I get 12 months. The end. Stop talking about it. And then I asked at 32 minutes and 43 seconds, can I keep my phone number, please? And they were like, yeah, here you go. And then at 35, near the end of the meeting, they can clearly tell that I'm trying to get out of this thing. I'm like, I got to go. I'm like moving, I'm shifting around. You can hear the phone shifting in my pocket. I'm like, I got to get out of here. 35 minutes and 54 seconds, okay? The executive pastor asking me to keep this confidential, minus the counsel, like a lawyer, and my wife. But, quote, keep it here. He was telling me to keep it silent. Basically, you keep that here. That stays here. I wish you could hear it. Holy smokes. It was just jittery. I felt like I was trapped in this room, and I was like, my anxiety levels were peaking. I was about panic attack mode. Like, it was, if you guys don't know what a panic attack is, like, it's the worst thing that could happen to you. 36:14, the executive pastor says, we don't want weeks to go by. We want your answer on this ASAP. Like, he's just like, tell us now. 37:10, I explained to them that we can't move. Like, this is crazy what you guys are doing to me. I have my kids who are finally in a place that they have their roots. They've moved. My adopted boys have moved like 25 times. They can't keep doing this. I was like pleading, cannot keep doing this. They didn't care. At 40 minutes, 44 seconds, executive pastor encouraging me to keep the lines of communication open. And so that's what happened in this meeting. And again, I have the recording of it. And if you could hear the way that it went down, you guys would be, if you think I'm angry and you guys are upset, this would inflame the world. This church's doors would close in months. If the internet heard this and went to this church and said, what is this? If just the congregation heard this recording, these two pastors at minimum would be asked to step aside and resign. At minimum, because the amount of lies that were done on this recording. So that's what happened at the meeting. I mean, I'm so far gone. It's like 55. I have to do another video after this because I want to talk about other things. Like there's other things. There's like the lawyers and the statement that came out with after this firing meeting. And there's all this stuff that happened. I want to talk about it. So I guess we're going to do another video tomorrow. Sorry, guys. No cliffhanger today, but tomorrow we're going to get into the things that happened afterwards and kind of where we are now and what has happened since that took place. But this meeting was crazy. And imagine two pastors sitting there gaslighting you. They're telling you to lie to the congregation, saying we're okay with lying to everybody. And that when I sent them this recording, it just proves how powerful this thing was by how scared they were that they had an emergency meeting with the elders, that then their lawyer came after me at like 11 o'clock at night, freaking. What I have in my possession would take this place down. And so the issue is that if I release it, I'm scared I'm going to be sued. It's not in this church's best interest to sue me, though. And so I'm kind of halfway there because if I get sued, then all this stuff comes out into the open. And all the 10 people that they let go of before me, they're all going to come and stand up and say, maybe not just for me, they're going to stand up for themselves and say, this church has done this to so many people. So we're going to cover that in the next episode. When I met with all these other people that got fired or pushed out or were resigned, we're going to talk about it because I talked to those people. And there's one thing that kept popping up. The executive pastor fired from his position for doing dirt at his other church. And then this is the last place he can land because no one else will hire him. First of all, he's the worst preacher on earth. And so when they don't tell anybody who's speaking on Sunday at this church because everybody wants to be the lead pastor because they like him. So they don't tell anybody because they used to tell people who was preaching on Sunday. And when this guy preached, no one came. That's how bad he was. That's a little bit petty, but that's how bad he was. Just not gifted in that area. And so people are like, why does he work here? He's not good. And then his wife works there, and then they hired a new youth pastor and his wife and all these couples that they're hiring, and they're just setting themselves up to fail. I don't want to see this church fail, but I definitely want to see justice for what happened to me and the lies that happened and the absolute dirt that happened to my family. Also, we're going to talk about the elders in the next episode. I got a story for you that's going to boil your blood. You think this is bad? Something else went down with my wife and an elder, and like some craziness, okay? It's going to get crazier on the next episode. This is just not going to end. It's getting crazy. Like and subscribe, hit the bell. It's going down.